I challenged myself to sculpt in Blender for 100 days. Why? I don't know. Maybe I was bored. Maybe I wanted to gain a skill. Maybe I've lost control of my life, and this is an effort to get back on track instead of spiraling into the darkness of an abyss anxiety while I implode all my relationships. So, what is the challenge, you ask? Well, maybe if you let me finish talking, I'll explain. Every single day, I need to spend 1 hour practicing sculpting in Blender. For the challenge, I'll be using Blender and a drawing tablet. Why Blender? Well, it's free, and I'm Dutch. I can't help it, I flock to it like a moth to a flame. Also, I read somewhere that you needed a drawing tablet, but I didn't want to buy one, so I just opened a random drawer and found it instead. No, this is not from a previous attempt at learning digital art. What do you mean? Usually I start new projects with massive goals, become disappointed when I don't make progress towards these goals right away, and give up after a few days. But this time was different. My only goal was to do this for an hour, every day, without fail. Wouldn't matter if I was sick, if I had a busy day, or if my wife were to be in labor. It seemed easy enough. And for the first 19 days, it couldn't have felt much worse. If I had to give a name to this phase of the challenge, I would call it flailing around because I don't know what I'm doing, or Fabit Quia for short. I should work on this acronym. I was following tutorials at random, following what looked interesting and inspiring. And in all honesty, I really needed this phase to dial in on what I liked and didn't like, and to discover where this whole thing was going to take me. And as for what I've made, lightning round. This face, this other face, Mushroom Man, which I wanted to give arms but couldn't. I still love him though. A Moai, something from Hollow Knight, some anatomy practice, some hair, a weapon, this creature, I don't know what it is either, a failure of an attempt of a character, a birthday cake, and some hands. Yeah, these weren't very good. Now that I was getting familiar with the tools and have followed a lot of tutorials, I figured it was time to start working smarter. So I did some research on day 20 and applied this moving forward. The most important things that I found are: don't multitask, turn off all videos you have running in the background, keep the distractions to a minimum, don't practice long sessions. I didn't have time for this anyway. Instead, what you should be doing, deconstruction. If you're making a complex shape, you need to deconstruct them into simple shape so your simple mind can understand the hard thing. Recall. Neuroscience is very hard, but simply said, if you don't make your dumb brain try to remember how to do a thing, it'll sell your brain real estate and then you won't be able to do it anymore. Which is why you forget how to do something after watching the tutorial. So you need to practice without them after learning it for the first time. Self-critique. If you never look back, you won't know what you could do better, and thus not improve. Good quality sleep. Ah well, I'll have to do without this tip. Spaced repetition, which is exactly what we are doing already. Instead of sculpting an entire day on Sunday, I sculpt for only 1 hour. But I do it every single day, repeating my tasks spaced out throughout a week. Let's see if this helped me. At this point, I had learned a thing or two. And instead of looking for a tutorial and following it, I would come up with an idea and only follow a tutorial if I had no idea how to do a certain thing. Then I would redo it myself and build up a set of skills that way. To give you an example, I wanted to learn how to make horns. So I looked up a tutorial, made a horn, and then made a sculpt with it. Then I repeated the steps without the tutorial to make sure that I could actually do this myself. After which, I had a pretty good idea on how to make horns. Then I repeated the steps, learning things like armor, cloth, and some anatomy. On top of this, my project started getting larger and larger, and it was really nice to see some progress, because now I could actually see some sort of result. Funny, results came along while focusing on the process. It feels like there's a lesson in here somewhere. I was trying a lot of things, which also means there were a lot of failures. I really hated some sculpts, and at the end of certain days, I really felt like I couldn't do anything anymore. There was this one day, I was just trying to sculpt a base of rocks, and at the end of the day, I felt really bad for not being able to sculpt some rocks. How hard could it possibly be? Other days, it just all resulted in a crash because I don't know how to use Blender that well and there are certain limits. I did start to get some days where I was very proud of my results though. Like when I started sculpting the Boulette, a magical creature from Dungeons and Dragons. Or at the day that I was playing a little bit too much Silksong and decided to make Envoy, a little enemy from the game. At this point, I was starting to get the hang of it. I was getting the workflow, and my projects grew in complexity. Even though I knew in the beginning that it was important to plan your projects well, only now was I really finding out what that meant. If you want to start sculpting yourself, or are still in the early learning phase, and more complex models just baffle you like they did to me, you have to start blocking out your sculpts. You use simple shapes like cubes, spheres, and cylinders to make a very simple version of what you want to make. And then you refine it, bit by bit. And it's really important to make the entire model in this simple way. Then make it slightly more detailed as a whole, otherwise you get sucked into the details without noticing the right proportions. Or you get lost in time and spend 2 hours on a detail that you later removed because it didn't fit the whole model in the first place. Now, let's have a rundown of the coolest projects that I did during this time. Like the spider. I really love how the legs turned out, and you can see the details in it. It might not be the most realistic spider, but hey, I think it's a decent sculpt. Or the sword, on which I spent way too long, but I textured it, and I just love how it turned out. And to stick with the Dungeons & Dragons theme, I also made a mimic. Yes, I'm aware I'm a nerd. This one didn't actually take all that long. I still think it's one of my better sculpts in this stage though. Can't be all good though. This absolutely derpy looking beholder is proof of that. I wasn't quite happy with how it turned out, so I redid it. And a couple days later, I got this result. It looks scarier, cooler, and I may have used some references this time, which is something that actually really helps. Why does nobody tell me this stuff? What I wasn't expecting when starting this 100-day challenge is that eventually I would get a course. And not just get one, buy one. With money. I don't like spending money. But I happened to stumble across this course that was exactly what I wanted to learn how to make. I know that I haven't really talked about why I wanted to sculpt in the first place, but as you may have guessed, I'm an avid Dungeons & Dragons player, and a while ago, I started to paint minifigures. I also happen to have a 3D printer lying around, so I can print my own minifigures. Though the only thing stopping me from bringing my own ideas into the world was the sculpting process. After about a year, I decided to finally jump in and start sculpting. So this Creating a Stylized Warrior course by Jose Arli Moreno, I hope I didn't butcher this, was right up my alley. So I started with a chest piece, unrelated to the actual sculpt, then began with the upper body of the actual thing. Then moved on to the arms, some legs, and a couple of other things. And then finally learning how to easily do hands and feet. I found these so incredibly hard before, but they've become at least doable for now. What I also really liked was that this course was going to cover how to make armor. I've really struggled to get crisp edges, and now I finally get why. I used to just try and create the thing at once, but now I've learned I can make a rough sculpt, then do a retopology to make a simpler mesh with crisp edges. One of the reasons I like this stylus sculpting, especially for minifigures, is that they are very readable. It's actually quite common that small details are either unpaintable or just not visible from a little bit away. Over the next couple of days, I added more and more details to the sculpt. I also added a shield and a trident. And eventually, I got to this. If someone had told me I would be making this inside of my 100-day challenge, I would have laughed, because I wouldn't have believed them, not even close. And yet I made it. I was actually in disbelief at this point. I was proud. And then I remembered there were 16 more days. So what am I doing for the remaining 16 days? Maybe you'll remember earlier on in the video, I said something about what to do and what not to do when learning. One of the things to do was to recall. Step away from the tutorials and do it yourself. So that's what I'm gonna do. It's gonna take another 20 hours or something. In these last couple of days though, something strange happened. Most of the time, I wasn't really looking forward to sculpting for another hour. But somewhere in these days, it totally switched around. I wanted to do more than an hour a day. But, for the sake of the challenge, I stuck to my 1 hour. I did have to overcome one challenge though. I was supposed to go away for a weekend with some of my friends, and this means that I couldn't be at my normal setup. So I had to create a mobile setup instead. I wasn't used to this, and I have to admit, it was much harder to work on it that way. But I still did it, and that's what counts. If someone believed I wasn't going to make it to 100 days, it would be me. I am incredibly self-critical, and this usually causes me to quit on projects. I'm also very self-conscious and perfectionistic. None of these traits really help you finish things, so it was very surprising to see that I actually got all the way to the end, no matter how hard it got at sometimes. Maybe I learned something about perseverance, or maybe creating a video of every single day really helped me to take accountability. Or I just really didn't want to fail. Whatever it happened to be, I'm very proud and very happy that I managed to finish the challenge. Because for once, I finished the project. Take that, anxiety. Now let's wrap this up with a quick montage. Yeah, this is still way too long. Time for the reveal. And that's it. 100 days of digital sculpting. On day 1, this was just an idea. Another project that was probably not going to finish. But unlikely as it seemed, I'm done. Looking back, it was a lot of fun. And it was really great pushing myself to do something every day, instead of standing still. It gave me a sense of progression. If you're thinking about doing something similar, or are feeling inspired to do something else for 100 days, like painting or woodworking, I highly recommend it. Especially if you feel like you never finished something. And even though there is only 100 total hours of sculpting, I think my last 2 sculpts are a lot better than my first. Mission accomplished. If you enjoyed this content, show me by liking and subscribing, because this is my first video and I have no idea if this is something you guys like. I also don't yet know where this will go next. Maybe in the future I'll do another challenge, like drawing or making video games. If you made it all the way to the end, I thank you, because this video took a lot of hours to make. Wherever and whenever you may be, thanks for watching.